This conference will now be recorded.
So hope you can able to see the screen, right?
Yeah, we can.
So what we discussed yesterday, like just a small recap in few minutes. So like what is an array and collections and why we need to go for an arrays. Sorry, why we need to go for an collections instead of arrays because of the some disadvantages that you see in an arrays. Like arrays are fixed in nature, they are not heterogeneous, and you cannot have like different. You cannot add different kinds of elements to this, and even it will also store only primitive types, like you cannot store the object types in an array, and these are the few disadvantages that you see in an array and you go for a collection. And it does not mean that always you go for a collection. It depends on the requirement. Here the arrays are like little faster than compared to collections, and we have just seen a few examples like how the operational internal operations of an collections, and the collections will have a underlying data structure. And we just discussed what is a data structure is nothing but when you have like plenty of data, like you make it in one arranged way so that you call it as your structure. Like you are making a, you have like data and you are doing some structure, like you call that as like you have data structures. And you have a collection interface where you have different things like list, set, and queue. So your list will have array list, vector, and linker list like this, and your set has like we have this seen this array list, linker list, vector with an examples as well. And the queue also has an interface which has a priority queue, and your set has an implementations of hash set, sorted set, linked hash set, and navigable and tree set. So these are nothing but your implementation of your set. And we just see what is the major difference between a list and set. Like list, where it will allow the duplicates and it will preserve the insertion order. When it comes to the set, it will not allow the duplicates, and it is not based on the, it will not be preserving that insertion order. So for different implementations you have different preservation. Like it will be like your hash set has different implementation, your linked hash set has some different when you store that element. So we just see that in detail. So like we just seen that array list will not allow, like content can allow duplicates, and will be storing it the transition order. And in case of an array list, the like the retrieval is faster and the updation is slower. Like when you want to update an element at particular index, it will take that like the traverse need to happen, right? So that is the reason your updation is slower in array list, and for that reason you go with a linked list. In linked list your retrieval, it is vice versa, your linked list retrieval is little complex and it takes more time. So when you want updation, you go with an linked list. I just want retrieval to be faster, I go with an array list. So this is how the things, right? And 1 minute. Okay. And we just see that array list and linked list, and this there is difference between your array list and a vector. So vector is somewhere like it is a legacy one, and it is for thread safety. So we'll discuss this multi-threading and this thread safe. So then you get little idea what is this multi-threading and thread safety things. And as I told, like we have different cursors like enumerators, iterators, and list iterators. So here, as you have like a bunch of elements, right? Like there are few elements you just get stored, right? And I just want one particular element to get that output, right? For example, as I told, like I have 10 employees, I'll be storing it in a list, and I just want to find an employee whose ID is 5, right? I'll iterate to the list and I'll just make an equals ignores case, or where his ID equals to 5. I'll just get his details and like the name and address like that. So when you have plenty of data in the list, list is something where you store the similar kind of data items, right? So when you, after storing it and while you iterating it, you want some particular element to get like you want for on an operation on some particular element, right? So for that you need to iterate for that list. So for that your Java provides, your collection provides a concept called cursors. So there are like three types of cursors: enumerations, iterators, and list iterators. And enumerators is a legacy one. Iterator and list iterator are the like the latest one, where you, like legacy in the sense it is like older versions. So it will provide predefined methods. Like iterator will give me the list of objects, and has set is like while is that, I think you have an idea like how the while loop works. So it will take a boolean as a parameter. If it is true, it will go inside, right? If it is a false, it will not go inside. So has next is going to return a boolean type. Whenever you have an element, it is going to return a true. So whenever it is true, it is going to commit, right? So whenever I iterated dot next, it is going to return me the element. So your cursor first points to the first object. So hello is the first object, your hello will come and it gets printed. And again the iteration happens because now the cursor moves to the next element. So what is the next element? Java. So here so your list is not empty because you have Java. Now it will go inside, and iterator the next will get me Java. So it will print again, it will go, your cursor increases its pointing to next element. What is this? Latin sum, right? So like that it continues until the dot com comes, right? So after printing the dot com, when it comes here, the list becomes empty and it will not execute this, right? So this is how the iteration happens. And this is the just a properties of an iteration. You like the what are the methods, and when you want to move for the next, and like in a list iterator is an advanced one where you can able to move with forward as well as backward. But when it comes to enumeration and iterator, you can only move with the forward direction. So it means here enumeration has only read access. It means you can just read the data but you cannot modify it. But in case of iterator, you can able to modify it. Like you can read it, and while iterating the element, I can, for example, like a list has 5 objects, right? I just want to remove one object like whose id is with 3, right? When iterating, I'll just check with an id and I'll remove that particular object. So you can do with that iterator. When it comes to the list iterator, you will have different methods like remove, replace, and add. So it means here you can only do the remove, but in this case you can do remove as well as addition and replace. So all these actions you can perform it. So the elements is a method, here iterator is a method, and list iterator is a method over here. To get that elements, you have has more next and has next. These are nothing but the different methods in this particular interfaces. But all three are the main thing is nothing but all three are used for iteration. Like the cursor is nothing but when you have list of like objects in list, not only the list, like it may be any collection object, right? Like has set or whatever you have that things, and you use this cursors to traverse from one object to another object like that. And so this is has set is nothing but the implementation of your set. Like as we see here, there is, right, set. So which has set, linked has set, and these are nothing but your implementation classes of your set. So whatever the properties of a set, so it is applicable for all the child classes of your, so whatever the properties that set holds, that is applicable for all the child classes of your child, right? As I told yesterday, the parent properties will be getting to your child, but child may have the extra properties like your, now in this case, has set, linked has set, and tree set will have the properties which is there for asset, and they may have this extra properties as well. So what is the main quality of a set is nothing but it will not allow the duplicates. So that's the main difference, right? It means in all these three cases duplicates are not allowed. If I'm trying to store a duplicate, it will not throw an error, but it will just ignore that value. Like if I'm trying to store the same value 5 or 10 times also, you're out, when you print it, you are getting only one time the 5 as a value. So and it will only allow one null value, because if you store multiple null, it treats it as a duplicate. Multiple traverse to the items in the list, that like you use the same cursor like that. I just show even with this examples also, so you can just read out the differences, you get more understanding on it. Sets uses the mechanism of hashing. right? So every it has, as I told, every data every collection object, collection class will have its own data structure. So one for here it is like a hashing mechanism it uses, and it contains only unique elements, and hash set allows null value, but only one time, right? It is non-synchronized. So this non-synchronized terminologist differs to multi-threading, so we'll see that. As said, does not maintain the insertion order. So you don't know, it is based on the object. The hash set has different implementation, so it is like lengthy concept. If you want, just go and see that hash set internal working, you get clear idea on it actually. So here hash set is a base search operation. The initial capacity is 16, like that. And you have linked asset. It contains unique elements only, like asset. Linked asset also provides the optional set operation, like linked asset is not synchronous, and your linked asset uh, maintains the insertion order, right? So here your linked asset will not allow the duplicates, and it maintains the insertion order. Okay. uh, you have any real-time example that you are getting for linked asset? Like for every asset, also for every collection object, you'll have real-time examples, but linked asset is something where you can able to relate it very easily, so that you have seen it a number of times. So I'm just asking where I can able to use this linked asset. So but the functionality of a linked asset is nothing but it will not allow the duplicates, and it will store the insertion order. So you, where in real scenario is someone can tell where I can see this kind of thing, like not allowing the duplicates and storing it in insertion order, like the real time example, if someone tried, or if you just think out, it will be great. Like, are you clear with my question, or like hello? Is like, are you clear with my question, like what I'm trying to ask?
Yes.
Please respond. Yes or no, anything. So anyway, I was expecting this to be last class, so at least try to respond for the last class. Hello?
Yeah, Surya, the question was clear, but we are thinking.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. At least okay. That at least I just want to know whether you are listening that question, or thanks for that response at least. So I was just asking, like, you have seen this kind of example where it will not allow the duplicates, and it stores the insertion order. I'll give some example also. You've seen it and you will delete it also. You have seen it and you will be generally deleting that also for storage and this thing. Also starts with H. This many clues I was giving. History, right? Can you relate that with history? This linked asset. So like when you are trying to search something, for sure it's going to store that this in the history, right? So this history here, it is going to like you can just see, right? So if I just open something new, it will be storing again here, right? It will be in that insertion order, and if I type the same link, right, it will not store it as duplicate. It will preserve the insertion as well as it will not store the duplicate. Is it fine? Like, can you relate that after telling the example as well?
Yes, Surya.
Okay.
Yes, Surya.
Mm. Okay, fine. Okay. So generally, there are many scenarios, but his I just thought like linked asset is something like where you could have seen it n number of times, right? Like when you browse something, when you and go to a history, for sure, it is going to get listed over there. And next time if you browse some other different thing, again it will be in the insertion order, like how you search the, in that way it is going to store. But if with the same URL you search, duplicates will not be allowed, right? So this is how. And one more thing is like your tree set. So here tree set is like it will contain unique elements, okay, as your set allows. And the major difference is nothing but it will store the in ascending order tree set generally. So in ascending, and like you can make it as descending order also. By default it will store it in the ascending order, like I just given some random numbers. So this is the special thing for a tree set. So it will store in the ascending order. Uh, So you have this kind of like requirements, right? Generally in real time, or most of the times, like I give some alphabets or I just give a number, but I just want that into be the in ascending order, in some order, right? So for that I can just go with a tree set. Okay, I it is like this comparable comparator is like huge topic actually, so it will not be covered in one class. It should for sure it to make that these things to get understand, for sure you takes like 1.5 or 1 hour. So I don't want to go into that depth, but generally in a overall like I just want to go it in a like a an outline is something where you have two interfaces like comparable and comparator, which is completely related to your tree set. So when you have like when you want default sorting, right? So then you go with the natural sorting, or default sorting you go with a comparable, right? So I just want it in the natural order, like ascending order or descending order, like. But when you want some customized sorting, what does the meaning of customized sorting is nothing but you have an employee objects, right? You have a student objects, right? So your Java will know integer, your Java will know string, but your Java will not know you created object, right? I have just created a student object, I have created an employee object first for my specific purpose, right? So that your Java or your computer do not know, right? So when you want that kind of sorting, when I just want to sort based on the like the employee objects or customer objects which I just added, and I can go with the comparator interface where it will allow me the customized sorting. uh, you can just read this difference also for a while. Okay, so it uses a method called compare to, it uses the method called compare and equals method. Okay, we'll just run some examples with hash set and linked set. I'll just create a class called set examples. Whatever I just told, I just want to show here. That's it. So I just created an interface called set new. So set is an interface, so I can able to create a linked hash set as well as l- tree set, right? So how I'll add it is dot add. So I'm adding the objects, something like Rahul is dot add. Rajesh. Yes. Abhi. I'm just adding the names actually. Some names: Rajesh, Rahul, Abhi, and Sai. Right. So if I'm trying to print that set, so what is this? It's nothing but linked asset. So what is the property that we have seen for linked asset? It is going to store it in the insertion order. So my output should be Rahul, Abhi, Sai. And as I told, that is, it is going to not allow the duplicates. For example, if I'm going to add Abhi one more time, right? So the same Abhi, right? It should not print. It should print only. It will not throw an error, but it should be allowing only one time Abhi. So my output should be Rahul, Abhi, Sai. You see, Rahul, Abhi, Sai. So it means you are trying to add a duplicate one more time, Abhi. It will not come, right? So if I add Abhi for 10 times also, it is going to get me only one time. The same holds for Rahul and Sai. So by this, we just clear that your linked asset is going to store it in the insertion order. It is preserved that insertion order, and it will not store the duplicates. But when it comes to hash set, so I'm just removing this linked hash set. Now it's an asset, right? Why I just made it hold with set is nothing but your set is a parent. I can able to hold any child object. So now the objects got added to set. So what is the property of a set? It will not allow the duplicates, right? The same thing. So Abhi will not be coming two times, and but it will not store it in insertion order. So you cannot predict the output. So it will not be the same or may be the same, but you cannot be the okay. Rahul, Sai, Abhi. You see, Sai was coming before Abhi, right? So it is based on their hash code mechanism. So it will not preserve that insertion order. And next, what is nothing but reset. I was just trying to import that things change to reset. Okay. So if I just add it, if I just print now, so can someone tell me what will be output for reset? Like we have seen, right? What for a reset? What is the property that we have seen? Like
It will give in ascending order.
it will be by default maintains in ascending order, right? So then what is my ascending order here?
Abhi, Rahul and Sai.
Mm, yes, Abhi, Rahul, and Sai, right? Because A is first, next R, next Sai. So if there is another name starts with same alphabet, it is going to check with the second letter. This is fine. 1 minute. You can just see the slide. You get more idea. This differences. Hope it is clear, right? So if I add numbers also, it is going to print me in that ascending order. Like if it is a string or a number, it is going to print me in that ascending order. Okay, it means if I add one, something like 5, 3, 3, 2. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 5. Sorry, for a numbers, it should not be treating as a string, right? So you can see 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay, hope this is clear, right? We just saw whatever the examples that we just saw. I was just trying to show with an example. Okay, so why this comparable and comparator comes to the picture? When the comparator comes to the picture is nothing but when you want to add a customized objects, right? I just create an employee object, and if I'm trying to add it to a tree set, for sure it's going to give me an exception. For that, this comparator and equals comes to the picture, and you just go through this in internet or something like any queries we can just reach out to me, because it is like little lengthy one, so we cannot cover in the session actually. Okay, and the next thing is nothing but your map actually. So here map has like the classified into again hash map, tree map, enum, linked hash map, and weak hash map. There are like other implementations of your map. So when you see it in a list and in set, so you are allowed to you are having an option to add only one value, right? But there can be a requirement you need to add multiple, like two values, right? One is like a key and one is like a value, right? So I just want some set. So how can I give an example? uh, for example, you just want to add employees, right? When you have a list and you want to add an employees to the list, right? And I'm just trying to create 10 employees, and I'm trying to add that 10 employees to the list. After adding that 10 employees, I just want to specify, like, an employee will have a unique ID, right? So I just want to associate that employee with an ID that I cannot do in case of your list or set, but you can do in case of your map. What I can do is nothing but I can have an ID one for that employee one, right? Employee two, like it's an id and there is an employee, right? So it is like a key comma value. So for that particular key you have this value, for the second key you have another value, where you need some association. You are having some objects, for that objects you need some association, like for this object I just want to refer one key. So in that case I just go with this map. So map is somewhere you add two values, key comma value, and the implementations are for your map is nothing but hash map, tree map, and enum map. These are the examples, and this is how you add the values to the map, and this is how you do that iteration in a map. Iteration in the sense like I want to get one by one value. So you can see this is how we have just created a map. Like before that you can just go with these points actually. Map, hash map contains the values based on the keys, right? So the first element is nothing but your key, and the second element is nothing but your value. So in list, and you just had a method called add to keep the value to that particular list, right? Here you have a method called put. So put will accept two things, one is key and one more is your value. And your keys are unique, right? I cannot have duplicate keys, but your values can be duplicated, and it can have one null key and multiple null values and non-synchronized. And hash map does not have an order, right? It is similar to your linked hash set. Your linked hash set you can just compare the with the properties. Your linked hash set will not have any order. Similarly your hash map will also not have any order. So for this I've just created a map, and we are just trying to put the Vishal and 10, like Sachin and 30, Abhinav and Vaibhav and 20. So for this particular key, this is a value. For this particular Sachin, this is a value. You can just take the score or something, whatever the mean, right? Like Vishal has scored 10 and Sachin has scored 30, Vaibhav has scored 20. I'm just giving an examples like that. And I want to print that values, right? So if I want to print that key comma value separately, you have an entry set, it is going to give me that entry. So for each loop is nothing but you are trying to iterate that until that gets false actually. So entry set dot entry, it's going to give this entry, right? Vishal comma 10, this entry it's going to key and get value is going to give me that Vishal, and get value is going to give me the 10. So this is how you iterate in the hash map. And you have linked hash map. So the linked hash map contains values based on the key, your linked unique elements, and all the properties are same, but here it will store it in the insertion order. It is similar to your link hash set. Actually, your hash set will preserve the insertion order, right? Similarly, your linked hash map also will preserve the insertion order. And your tree map contains and it is same like your tree set. So your tree set will not allow duplicates, your tree map will also not allow the duplicate, where the difference is nothing but it will tree set will store only one value. Here your tree map will store key comma value, two values can be stored in your tree set, sorry, tree map. So you can just do this but when it comes to the properties, your asset is similar to your hash map. Link hash linked hash set is similar to your linked hash map. Tree map is similar to your tree set, right? But the difference is nothing but though in those cases with set you store only one value, in map you store two values,
Yeah.
like key comma value.
Okay.
Is someone want to ask something? Is any queries actually?
No, sir.
Okay, I just thought. Okay, this is generally that overall like a diagram, like where which is allowed, right? So whatever we discussed, it is just an high end view, right? Your link array list, what it will allow, null allowed, null allowed. So when it comes to null, what is there, right? And in case of tree map, nulls are not allowed. Why? Because when you add a null, it will throw a null pointer exception. And insertion order, so this both will give an insertion order, and this is a random, and as it linked, it's an insertion order and ascending order, right? So tree set, so whatever we just see, that we are just seeing it in the overall diagram, that's it. So when you use, generally when you go with usage, right? So when you try to apply these things in your real-time applications, you will be based on the scenarios, right? So I just want retrieval faster, I'll go with an array list. I want updation faster, I go with a linked list. No, I want duplicates not to be allowed, then I go with a set. I want duplicates to be allowed, I'll go with a list, right? No, I want to keep my data in key comma value, then I need to be putting it in map, right? So based on the requirement, you will be using this different kinds of collections. When you are aware what collection is met, collection is some, it is like not any difficult thing or something very where you need some logics to be applied, right? So for understanding is nothing but you need to understand what is that class and what is that behavior, that if you remember it, and when you try to write the real coding, right? When you do your real time projects, you need to, based on the requirement, you go with particular collection object, or a collection class based on the requirement. I just want ascending order, I just want to store it, in that case I go with a tree set or tree map like this. Hope these collections were clear, hopefully. Any queries in the collections overall topic? If not, I'll just move with multi-threading. Okay, so hopefully no queries. So now we generally go with another topic called multi-threading actually. Okay, you can just read it out, right? So you have seen uh, some scenarios or some times, right? As a human being also we need to do multiple tasks, right, like writing the code, or even like when you, even when you do a, like when you try to eat also, you'll just try to be on phone, you'll watch TV, multiple things you used to do it, right? Similarly the system also need to, there are some situations where the system also need to perform multiple tasks at a time, right? And why you need this multi-threading and multitasking is nothing but very simple answer is to improve the efficiency, like to get the out, to get done the things faster, right? The same as a like human picture shows, right? You have multiple things, like if you what you can do is nothing but you can just complete one thing completely, and again after finishing that you can just switch to other thing. But whenever you get some time in, when you're doing it, right, so you can just switch over there and you will complete other work, and when you get time out there and here you do that, this work, right? So it is like managing multiple things at a time. You call it as multi-threading in simple words. It's a process of executing multiple threads, or a thread is slightly some process or multi-processing, multi-threading both to achieve multitasking. Like the terminology may be different or difficult, but in a simple word, you have some work, right? You have some task to do, right? So when you want some task to do, instead of doing the task at once, like when you want to have some big task at once, what you do, in the system will be creating multiple threads to it, right? So multiple threads will be acting on it, and they will be at the end, that task will get finished. Actually a thread is a small unit or executable code that performs a particular task. Many threads execute simultaneously, you call that as multi-threading. So what is a thread is nothing but a small unit. Like you have big code, instead of executing all that, you have big work, instead of making all that work at once, you divide it into multiple threads and you execute simultaneously on that particular work, and you achieve the task within the with faster time. So that you call it as multi-threading, and many threads execute simultaneously, and the process of running currently can be. So this is what you're multi-threading, and you can just go more on this online on this, you get like better idea as you learn the topics. Okay, there are like multitasking can be two ways, like one process based multi-threading and one is like thread based threading, right? Multitasking and multi-threading, right? So when you have a process versus thread, so a process may contain different threads, right? Thread 1, thread 2, right? And a process is typically independent, has a considerable more stable and subtrade address basis, right? And your threads is nothing but subset of your process, right? And group of process, you can just make it as a, like you can just consider it as an operating system. Just an example I'm just telling, like in an operating system also, like when you are trying to do multi uh, threads gets opened, right? So for example here also I was, you can able to see the screen, and you can able to listen it, right? While I was speaking, right? All these are nothing but multiple things, right? To which I'm just take just as an example. Okay, so your system allows multiple tasks at same time, right? You open Excel, you open Paint, you open PowerPoint, you do multiple things at a time, right? So all that are nothing but based on your thread, it happens. And there are like different life cycle methods and life cycles of your thread actually. So when thread was burned, it will be a new state, and whenever it is running, runnable state is something like it is not yet ready, but it is just like they to start it, and running state is nothing but where it is going to execute it. So once it completes its tasks of executing, it will be in dead state or terminated state. So in between runnable and running, you have some intermediate states like wait, sleep, suspend, like we notify all or nothing, but your intermediate things in between your runnable and running states actually. And this is generally the other way of representing your life cycle of a thread. So it will be like bond state, like when you want some task. So a thread is some small piece of work and it starts executing it, and after running in runnable state or in running state, it will be going into the waiting state. So while executing the thread, so there is some other priority thread comes, right? So then what happens, this thread will be waiting for some time. and again it will start executing that the its previous thing, right? So whenever you are trying to eat or when you are trying to do some work, right, you got some urgent call, right? So you are doing the work is your current task, right? But you got some emergency thing to attend, right? Your emergency call or emergency some person came to meet you, right? What you do, you stop this action currently what you're doing, right? It is not like you terminated this action, and you go to that person and you just attend that call and like attend that person and you finish that work and come back again and resume the work that what you have done, right? So it is like doing multiple based on the priority, you just decide to go there or to continue that execution. In the same way the system also do perform that, right? When one thread is executing, there is some other thread comes to execute that particular task, right? It will go to the waiting state and it will wait until that thread finishes, and once it finishes it resumes its work again. Like that it is like coordination between. For that you have different methods how that how that threads will communicate with each other and how the processing will be get faster. Okay, sleep, wait are nothing but sleep is something like your thread will be in hold for some time, right? I just want that particular thread not to execute anything for 10 seconds. I'll just make that thread to sleep for 10 seconds, right? Waiting state is something is like it kind of sleep only, but waiting happens with different things. Okay, so there are ways of creating a thread, right? There are generally two ways of creating a thread. One is like executing your thread class and by implementing your runnable interface. So you have a thread class which is a predefined thing and you have a runnable interface which is a predefined thing. So for a class you do an extends, for a thread you do for an interface you do that implementation. So that is how you can see there are two ways that you create a thread, and whatever the way that you do, the mandatory thing is nothing but when you want to implement the thread, when you want to create the customized thread, you need to override a method called run method, so which is present in both the cases. Okay, you have a run method that need to be overridden. Okay, what is this run method is nothing but where you will be writing the code to specify the action. So you can just is like some example. I can just write it and show to you. Now you create a thread. I just want to create a customized thread, right? So here I just have a thread example. What I need to do, I need to extend the thread class. So it is a predefined class, thread class, which is present in Java. So, and we are just trying to do that extends. So after extending this thread class, what I need to do is nothing but I need to override a method called run. So which is present in the thread class. Okay, and I can just specify change the visibility to public. This is an access specifier. When you are trying to override it, you cannot reduce this access specifiability. It's a common example. I'm just trying to take you. I'm just trying to take a for loop less than 5. So inside the child thread. Okay, I have a main method. What I'll do, I'll just create the thread object. So how you create thread example object? This is way, right? This is a way you will be creating an object with a reference variable, right? T e equals to, and I'm just calling te dot start method. So you may get confused why I'm just calling the start method. I'll let you know. And I'm just writing the same for loop inside parent thread. Okay, I'll explain you these things, but I'm trying to execute it and we'll see that output inside parent thread, inside child thread. Okay, so if you see the output, so they have just written a two for loops, right? One is with the parent and one is with child. And I've just what I've done, I'm just telling what I've done. I just created a thread example class and extends the thread, and I've written a method called run which is present in this thread class. So it is like overridden method. So from a parent I can do overriding. It means same class name, same method name, and same signature. So the method run method which is present in a thread class will also have zero parameters and which have return type as void. So this is nothing but you are doing an overriding. In overriding method, I have just written my logic, right? So this is how you are creating a thread, right? And I'm just written a logic to understand. As of now, I'm just written like inside the child thread, and I have a main method, and I've just created an object of thread example. And what I'm trying to do, I'm just calling t.start method, and I just have a for loop and inside a parent thread. Like this is why it is printing for 5 times, because I'm just have a for loop and iterating it for 5 times, and if it is equals to 5, I'm just terminating it. So that is the reason your parent gets printed for 5 times and your child gets printed for the 5 times. But here you should be getting a doubt, right? When I call t.start method, right? So it is print, it is where the start method is present, it is present inside this thread class. You're not how this code which is present in the run method gets printed. Did you get my question? I was not calling the run method, right? So here when you want something to be executed, you'll call that method, right? I'm just calling the start method, and what it is printing, it is printing the this inside child thread. So here what happens when you created this thread object, and when I call t.start, whether the start method is present in this thread example? Is someone yes or no? I have created a thread example object, and I am calling with the reference t.start. Is the start method present in this thread example or not?
No.
No, right? So when you are trying to call a method which is not present in the class, it should throw an error. But why it is not happening? Assume that I do not have m1 method. I assume that I have m1 method over here, right? If I call, okay, I have an m1 method over here, and if I call t.m1, no issue, because m1 is present. Assume that if there is no m1 method in this class thread example, if I call t.method, it will show that m1 is not able to, I cannot find m1 is not there. But why this error is not getting thrown in case of this t.start? Why? Because this start method is present in the parent class. So whenever you call a method, if it is not present in the child, if it is present in the child, it will execute that method. If it is not present in the child, it is going to call its parent method, right? So this start method is present in the parent class. So this thread example is not having the start method, right? So now your compiler is going to look for the start method in the thread example class. In thread example, thread sorry, not thread example, thread predefined class, this predefined class already had a start method, and they have written a code to create a thread for you. And from that start method they are calling the run method which is present in the child. So that is the reason inside child thread gets executed. If you see, I'm just not calling the run method. If you directly call the run method, it is not the behavior of your multi-threading. If you see, if I'm calling t.start method also, what should execute first? Child execute should happen, then parent should execute. But here it you see parent and child is execution, because it's a multi-threading. You cannot predict the output. Whatever comes, your whatever the task gets picked, it is going to based on the priority, it gets executed. If I run it for 10 times, your 10 times may have the same output or may have the different output. You cannot predict the output. Okay, you see inside parent first came, then child came, then again parent started continuing, right? Because this is like your this is how your thread behavior, right? If it is a normal Java application, what happens? Like if they not if there is no threads were created, what happens? Your child will execute continuously for 5 times, then the parent comes. But here it is not the case, because this is your thread behavior. So this multi-threading will be little confusing, but you should be going with the tutorials, or like not with more under like as on practice you get this concepts little understanding and clear. So for sure at the start point it will be little confusing. Okay, but just try to understand this is how we created a thread. We extends a thread object thread class predefined thing, and we override a run method, and we'll create this thread example object, and we'll call start method. If we call run method, it will not be a thread multi-thread behavior. And the start method, which is present in the thread class, predefined thread class, which is going to call the run method of your child. And this is how this inside child thread gets executed, this code. Okay, this is one of the way you create a thread. And there is one more way that we have seen is now with runnable, right? Where you will pass this as an object as a reference. Okay, this is just a simple example how we just created. That's what we have just seen right here. Extending that, those there's a predefined class, they are extending it thread, and they're doing these auctions. They're overriding the run method, and they're performing some actions over here. Okay, so thread priorities. So what does thread priority? As I told, like you have multiple threads, right? So by default every thread will have 5 priority, but when you are trying to create a thread like child thread or parent thread, you have just created in the previous example. But my priority is nothing but I want my child thread executed by first always. So if you run it for 10 times, you may get different output, but on the 10 times or 100 times, I just want some thread to be given the priority, right? Because here this execution will happen simultaneously, right? So you cannot predict which one will get come for the first time, right? Right, if I run for the 10 times, it may be different, maybe same, right? You can see parent and child came again, parent again, child came, parent came, then child came. It may come same also, depends, but cannot be the same always, right? But I want always my child to be first, or I just want always my parent to be first. In that case, you can just decide, you can give the priorities to the thread. Based on that priority first, it will get executed. Like you have the priorities from 1 to 10 generally. So these are like different kinds of methods like yield, sleep, or these are the different methods as this example says, right? So for example, you have thread 1 which is executing, right? And on a processor, and when you call that yield method, right, on that, so it will get stopped, and it will give the priority to the other threads, and other threads will execute. And once that execution completes, again your thread 1 will get started. Whenever some thread is executing, when you call yield on that particular thread, and that particular thread goes to the waiting state, it will not execute that particular action. Join is also one kind of the method where you decide that a thread behavior. For example, you have a main thread, right? So assume that when your thread 1 is continuingly executing, right? And on that main thread, if you call thread 1 dot join, then what happens? Your main thread will stop executing at this point of time, wait thread 1 to complete its action. Okay, so in case of yield, it will go to the sleep, but it will not the guarantee that until thread 2 completes it will be in the yield, right? After some time, after before completing thread 2 also, your thread 1 can execute. But in case of join, for example, one thread is executing it, right? When one thread is executing, I want some other thread to give the priority, right? Then what could be the priority is nothing but the second thread should, after completing the second thread only, the first thread should start executing. It is like you have one task, you have two threads. One thread is executing that task, but there is thread 2 came which is priority, right? Then what I want to make is nothing but I want to stop this thread 1, and I want to thread 2 to execute that particular task. When you are executing that particular task, you what you want to restrict is nothing but your thread 1 should act until your thread 2 finishes this particular task. Then you can call the join method. So until you can see this main thread will stop executing at this point until thread 1 completes. After thread 1 completes only your thread 2 start will execute, and main thread will start executing and until thread 2 completes. So there is a task. So when some you assume that main thread is executing on the main thread, you call the join. So then means this main thread will go to the waiting state until what time your thread 1 completes its task. It may be 1 day, 2 days, or infinity. After thread 1 completes only your main thread will get a chance. So again on while executing that main thread, again your thread 2 dot join called. So when I call thread 2 dot join, your thread 2 takes a priority and main thread will be stopped or it will go to the waiting state. So until once the thread 2 completes, your main thread will resume its task. And this is how your weight, sleep, yield differences, actually you can just go through that. Weight is something like the thread is going to get weight, and the sleep and yield are the same kind we have just seen. And this is like synchronization and non-synchronization, right? Synchronization is something where like when you have multiple tasks, right, and what you just want that to be uh, like in a particular order. Like a synchronization capable controlling the access of multiple threads to a shared is a better option when you want to allow one thread to access the shared resource at one time. Only one thread can access, right? Other threads will cannot able to access at that particular time. Once the thread finishes only, the other thread can able to take that action, right? So that is called your synchronization and non-synchronization. So synchronization is nothing but at one time only one thread can access, so other thread cannot come and access that particular task until that thread finishes its thing, right? So you can just see this as a real-time example in railway reservation, right? For example, you just trying to you assume that you are trying to book the reservation. You have a train or a bus, and here is an example with the bus, actually, right? So if it is a synchronized way, what should happen? I just see one ticket, right? I just seen one ticket over here, and this passenger is trying to book that ticket, right? So when this passenger is just booked it, I just tried clicked on that particular ticket, and after clicking on that particular ticket, what happens? It will resume, it will go to the payment way, and it will have, it will call another service, and the payment should done, right? So after making the payment, right, only if there is a, if he you do not have balance, or if the transaction failed, only thus that ticket should be available for the passenger too, right? In middle, if it is available, so what happens? There is only one ticket but two passengers got booked, which is non-synchronized. It should not happen in real scenario, right? So I think you are getting, you have one ticket, and these are the two passengers just saw the ticket, and this passenger is trying to book the ticket. He just clicked on that ticket, right? And this thread is executing it. So it is synchronization. Like what is a synchronization? Until this thread completes the action, this thread should not get allowed to book the ticket, right? So it may be, what is action, like he should go to the payment, and he should finishes his payment. After completing his payment done, whether may be failure or success. If it is success, what happens? For this passenger too, you cannot see the ticket. If it is a failure, the passenger too can see the ticket. The failure may be with a transaction or a network. The passenger too can see the ticket, and if he starts action, if he starts trying to book the ticket, then it should block for passenger one. So it is like synchronization. At one time, only one thread can able to access this resource, right? You can just keep this object as nothing but resource. Okay, if it is simultaneous, what happens, right? Simultaneous, if it in the payment way, if this passenger one is in the payment way, he is trying to enter his OTP, and he is in the payment, right? But even he can also see, and he can also book it. So if the booking happens for the two people, you have only one ticket. So this is inconsistency. So this should not happen in real time scenario, right? So this is one of the example where you use synchronization at one, you have one resource at one particular thread should access that. Is this like you can able to relate this with synchronization and threadings? You can see this are nothing but two threads. Okay, please go through this recordings also if you get more like if you have stopped somewhere like not in, like you're not able to understand some things. Like there is a other concept like inter-thread communication where you want one thread to get communicated to another, like you will be using these different methods like wait, notify all these methods, and you will be communicating between the threads actually. And this is about your multi-threading and your collections actually. And this overall session, like as we had like 10 days of session, so I it for sure Java is like very vast, right? So I cannot able to cover all the topics, or I cannot able to be going in deeper of the concepts because the session is only for the short duration, right? And if you like the session and if you just want to attend for more things, like we are this like Isha has like a like Java full course where you will be covering with end to end, like developing a an application with React JS or Angular, and the framework with Spring Boot and Spring, and with the database with SQL and Oracle databases and queries from end to end. They have a course actually, so it is like 40 hours of course. And if you want to register for that, there are like upcoming classes for that, and you can reach out to Kumar. I'll just share his number in the chat. You can just reach out to Kumar or Anita, like in, I think if you are in the group, so they'll be letting you know the details. And it's parallelly with the performance training also has happening. So performance, if you are anyone interested with the Isha with performance, right, trainings also, you can just go and register. Like for the performance things, this core Java is very useful. I hope these sessions will be useful, and you can able to uh, do better when you go with the trainings actually. And for full Java also, full Java course also happening, and with the performance also the things were happening. And I'm just dropping out uh, the numbers in the chat actually. You can just reach out to them for when the classes starts and what can be the details of that sessions. And apart of that, any queries in today's classes, you can just let me know, like the collections or the multi-threadings things. So like we are winding up the sessions for today, like from today. So this is the last session actually. Thank you. Okay, thank you all.